Welcome to You've Got This with Sarah Hamaker, a podcast to encourage and equip moms along their parenting journey. Join Sarah each week as she interviews dads and moms like you and discusses the joys, challenges, and rewards of raising kids.
Hi, and welcome to this week's You've Got This. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and I'm glad you joined me. Today, I'm here with Tierney Boggs. She's a PCI Certified Parent Coach. And she supports parents to be present, authentic, and intentional, all while using their God-given strengths to release their arrows with all their might. And I love that kind of imagery, Tierney, because I think, we are kind of a little bit in a battle to help our kids, learn about God and also to, grow up in the fear and admonition of the Lord.
Yeah. And the battle is shifty. It changes every single day. A lot of parents I coach, they've never been a parent of a 5-year-old, and then they've never been a parent of a 6-year-old before. So new battles every single day. Right.
But I think the foundation is the same. I mean, once you kind of have that firm foundation, you can you have to do some adjustments. I certainly do not parent my 11-year-old like I do my almost 17-year-old. I don't think she'd like that.
Yeah. And as we're grounded in our values and our love for the Lord, that fuels us. And then we can face challenges with confidence from that place, even though the challenges look different.
Right. And I think that as we, kind of work on that foundation, we do have to do those little kind of, I think, rechecks. Every once in a while, I'm like, okay, how are we doing as a family? Together and thinking about God, and how are we, as all my kids, are they kind of, paying attention to their walk with the Lord? Am I paying attention to mine? Am I neglecting my own personal devotions because I'm so, quote, busy?
Yeah. And as we grow, we become more aware of certain areas, and it causes us to change and be better, right? More equipped.
Yeah, right. And before we started recording, we were talking about, how the Bible really gives us a great blueprint for parenting, even though a lot of it doesn't specifically address parents, right? So you mentioned Philippians 4:8 as something that you really have used as kind of a launch point to help parents think about raising kids. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Philippians 4:8 relates to parenting, specifically parent coaching, what I do, and that there's a process called appreciative inquiry that anyone can practice. And it's a process that was created by David Cooper-Ryder. And there are 4 stages that we walk through, and they help us to see the positive and to take action towards the positive, not just think about it, but literally do something for it. And I would love to give you some more detail on that.
Yeah, so right, and I love that that you said that anyone can kind of use this to as a way to relate to our kids and to think about parenting. So why don't you give us an example of how that would work?
Yeah, so the 4 stages are called discovery, dream, design, and destiny. And in discovery, we're literally just thinking of a situation, maybe a challenge we're working with. I had a client whose daughter did not like mornings. She was 5. She had to get up for kindergarten. It was a struggle every morning. So I asked my client, if anything is working, what is working here? And she realized that her daughter did great things and was actually helpful in the morning when she gave her a sense of responsibility. Some other questions I might think of is what brings life and fulfillment to your child? What's the best of what is happening? How can we embrace your child's strengths in the situation, even though it's a challenge? And how can we even amplify them? So that's the first stage.
Yeah, and I before you go on, let's just spend a little time there. What did you call that? Was that the dream stage?
It was this discovery
stage. Yeah, and I love that that's focusing on what's what is going right in a situation? Because isn't it true that all too often we look at a situation and we go, oh my goodness, this is horrible, and there's like no redeeming thing at all in the situation. And yet, if we do really stop and look, we can find, even if it's a tiny sliver of positivity on that, because that is so important, I think, for our children and our teenagers to see that even if they get angry at their brother for the nth time, you know, you point out to them, yeah, but you're not physically doing anything with them. And I just think that part of your self-control, I think, is really important, you know. So anyways, I just thought just a minute just to kind of remind our listeners that, you know, we can do this. This is possible to find positives even in a situation where, your kid needs to work on, you know, using the anger example, needs to work on how to control his temper. But look at that and find out there is some positive, so you can give them that little bit of hope, right? That really helps them to want to get on the same page with you and help solve this. So I love that that's part of the discovery part. So go on. What's number 2?
Yeah. Just another note on number 1. There's power in zooming out and seeing the whole picture, where so often we are so focused on a tiny piece of the picture, we can't see the whole.
Right.
And also there's great research recently showing how our brain literally works differently when we come from a place of gratefulness. We have more control over our whole brain. So just more support on, you know, Philippians 4:8, focusing on all the good that's going on.
Right.
Number 2 is dream. So we're literally thinking, we're taking maybe a challenge and we're thinking, okay, what is my ideal for this situation? What is the best that this could be? What is the absolute best it could be? What might happen? You know, just literally planning what we would love it to look like. For example, my client said, I would love for my daughter to be excited to get up in the morning. That is like the best case scenario I could possibly dream of, which is a huge dream and it's beautiful. But yeah, we're focusing on what we want to happen.
Yeah. And you know, right. And we all have our own dreams of what will happen. You know, sometimes I dream about, you know, everyone, you know, magically doing their chores all the time without me reminding them. But sometimes I think when we have those dreams, we need to, you know, perhaps, you know, have realistic expectations with those as well, because and then obviously going with the positive part that we talked about for point 1 is that may be my dream, but in reality I need to remember, you know, most of the time this does happen. So anyway, so sometimes I think it's good for us to dream, and also, you know, maybe I'm sure some of the other points you're going to talk about is going to have, we need to kind of have that little bit of dose of reality in what our child is truly capable of doing. And if sometimes we can have too perfectionist, so we probably have to watch out for that a little bit.
Yeah, and based on the parent I'm having a discussion with, I might call the dream something else. I might call it a goal. I might call it, you know, instead of like, what's your dream, I might say, what's your ideal? Okay. Yeah. Because that is rooted in reality. However, some parents are really imaginative and they love the idea of crafting their own dreams. But going off of the third step is design, and we're actually using our child's strength to make this ideal happen. Yeah. So, for example, with the getting up early in the morning, we recognized that her daughter's strengths were contributing and feeling needed. So we had this idea that maybe it would be her responsibility to help make breakfast for the family, and she would get to meal plan, and she would get to help do the shopping, and she would have this process, and she could wake up excited and energized, knowing that her family was counting on her to make breakfast, whether that's something, you know, maybe it's toast, I don't know, it's something simple, but that motivated her, and it was based on what she needed, her strengths and her area of development.
Right. And I think, too, we forget that, you know, kids do like to have a say in their contributions. And whether that is, you know, giving them the option of, you know, doing, like for example, we use the morning routine. My boys have a list of things they have to do in the morning. My girls do too, but they're older, and so they've kind of mastered their morning list. My 2 tween boys, not so much. So,
yeah.
So we came up, I said, well, here's a list of the things that you need to do. I said, I don't care what order they're done in. That's up to you, because they talked to me. Okay. They kind of went through and helped me put everything on the list, from getting their clothes on to brushing their teeth to getting their backpacks ready for school, etc. And I said, you can do them whatever order you want. Doesn't matter to me, but these have to, these are the things you have to accomplish before you walk out the door at 8:25 in the morning. So they had plenty of time to do a lot of stuff. And I found that just instead of telling them, you have to get up and get dressed, and then giving them the order, giving them that freedom to decide how they were going to order their morning, things have gone a lot better. So sometimes that, like you said, finding that responsibility for them and also giving them that little bit of say in it. They still have to do the things on the list, but how they do them is up to them.
Exactly. Like, she still had to wake up in the morning, but she could add something enjoyable to that time.
Right.
And there's research showing that autonomy, competence, and relatedness are the 3 main factors to intrinsic motivation. So as we give our children autonomy, they take ownership over that in a new way.
Right. And that gives them that, it also gives them that sense of connectedness to to the family, right? I mean, we want them to feel like they're not just out there outlined, doing their own thing, but the things that they do matter, because it helps our family to run better, and they benefit from that. They benefit from having a clean cereal bowl to get down in the morning. So therefore, somebody has to do the breakfast. So that kind of reminding them how everything is kind of interconnected and not just separate, and there's not some magic cleaning fairy that comes along, or a breakfast fairy or whatever it is. So kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so number 4.
Okay.
The 4th step, it's called destiny. And this is where we celebrate all the good that has happened. And through the whole process, not only is the parent, not only are you learning about your child's strengths, but you're also learning about your own. So we're thinking, which of your strengths did you pull from to help see your child's? And to help your child flourish in the situation. So we're thinking, how can we sustain this so when the next challenge comes up, you can pull from your toolbox of strengths and use your own strengths to see your child's?
Yeah, and I think that, when you're married and have a spouse to, to do this, it's important to kind of know, his or her strengths as well, and how they complement you. There are things that my husband is much better at than I am, and he has more strengths in that area. And so I've just had to remind myself, and starting when the kids were little, to rely on him for that, to kind of go, okay, yeah, you kind of take this part because you're better at it. Not that I don't, that I abdicate, or he does either, but just the reminder that, it's okay to play to your strengths and work on your weakness, but to do that true partnership when raising kids.
It is a partnership. And as I've coached many couples, and that's what we find. And by recognizing the strengths in your spouse, which sometimes is easy to overlook at times, that is incredibly powerful, just having that conversation.
Yeah, and I think for moms, right, and for moms in particular, I think it can be difficult to, especially when our kids are little, to kind of relinquish that idea that we're the only ones who can parent the right way, because our husbands may be a little bit awkward, feeding the baby or changing the toddler, or all those things that we kind of just figure out pretty quick, because usually we're the primary caregiver when they first come home from the hospital, or however they come into our home.
Yeah, and what I've realized is as I relinquish some of that control to my husband, I realize I have more freedom and more space to enjoy my family.
Yes, exactly. So, and it's so I don't know. I think it's so empowering for us as women when we can look at our husbands and go, oh, yes, you are essential to this whole parenting thing, even when the kids are little.
Yes.
And that you bring, a lot of these strengths to here. And then just that kind of really, I think, makes a dad really feel like, he's a part of it because, there's important stuff for him to do and there's important stuff for you to do and you've got to do it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, empowering, definitely. And just realizing it's a process for all of us and it's not a place where we arrive at. Were you going to say something?
No, go ahead. It's just, and I love that, your focus is on Philippians 4:8 and how when we kind of look at our kids through that lens, right, whatsoever things are good and just and, worthy of our time and attention, it can really help us, I think, to not focus on the things that are, the more here and now that really aren't important, It's not that important if our kids have matching outfits. For the picture. I mean, it's nice, and doesn't mean we can't try for those things, but just to remember that sometimes we put our energy, I think, in things that are more transient than in those, the things that are more lasting.
Yeah, and as we zoom out, we get to move what's on center stage. So the negative doesn't get the spotlight anymore. We can move it to the side. And although the good and bad may be equally present, we get to choose what we look at, right?
Mm-hmm. And I love that how you said, we get to choose, we do, because it is a choice. It's a choice every day when we get up. If we're going to focus on the negative things that our kids do or the positive, and, not that we don't have to correct our children, but the way we do it, we need to take care that it's in a more positive, loving way instead of really harsh, because what's going to get the better result, right? Is it the...
Yeah. We're adding life to our family when we choose to see the positive.
Yeah, one quick example, and we're getting to the end of our time, Tierney, is that, one of my sons, whistles incessantly now.
Okay.
And, it's not, no really tune. It's fine. He was so proud when he learned to whistle and, he's a few years ago. But lately it's been a little more, a little more that he doesn't realize he's doing it. And so, I don't want him to drive his teachers crazy in school, school's in session now and all this kind of stuff. And so I realized that I was really barking at him a lot. I was saying, no, whistling, stop whistling, all this negative. And I finally and he would get upset. And I finally just asked him, I said, you need to stop whistling all the time. He goes, yeah, I know. I said, is it helpful for me to say, something when you whistle? He goes, well, it is, because he doesn't always realize he's doing it. I said, well, what can I say that you feel would bring it to your attention without making you feel super bad or get upset? So we talked about it. We realized I'll just say whistling. Just that one word. No, not stop whistling, not no whistling, not, just that one word. And he said, that would make him feel better. And yet it would still draw his attention, to help to stop it. And I thought, how many times do I take the time to do something like that? Right? When our kids have
exactly.
A bad habit or something they need to correct. How many times do I sit and think, how can I make this a more positive correction? Not ignoring the discipline that needs to be done, but how can I make it more positive? And I think that's kind of what you're talking about here, right, with the Philippians 4:8 and that kind of the appreciative inquiry, right? Is just to try to help us to think how to be more of an encouragement to our child as they work on this.
Yes, and how can we see them for the best of who they are?
Right. I love that.
Yes.
So, well, thank you so much for joining me. We are almost out of time, so I need to wrap this up.
You.
But you can find out more about Tierney and Appreciative Inquiry by going to her website, which will be linked with this blog. So thank you again for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you.
You've been listening to You've Got This. I'm your host, Sarah Hammaker, and today I've been talking with Tierney Boggs. She's a PCI Certified Parent Coach, and we've been talking about how Philippians 4:8 can really inform our parenting. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast of You've Got This with Sarah Hammaker. Sign up to receive notification of new podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhammaker.com. Until next time, remember, parenting might be hard sometimes, but don't worry, you've got this.